Welcome back, listening audience, to the Guns and Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sodini. I'm joined today, yesterday, tomorrow, every single day by my co-host, Kevin Barry. Kevin, how you doing?
Good. I didn't get kicked out like yesterday at the start, so we're doing better today.
It's not our podcast if we don't have some sort of issue. There always is an issue. Greg, RG, our guest today, there is always an issue with our it's almost like it's like we do it on purpose. We have to come in with technical problems. Everything is difficult, but it's unique. It's what makes us, right? Like at this point, it's expected. But I wanted to talk today. I'm excited to have our guests here. But before I introduce you guys, I want to tell a little bit of story about history with the organization, the foundation that these two gentlemen represent. When I first started Walk the Talk America in 2018, I literally thought I was the only person focusing just on suicide prevention when it came to firearms. There was a lot of veteran organizations. People would raise money for veterans, right? But coming across your foundation, which is the Scott Sipple Foundation, was the first time that I saw, I guess, people from the firearms industry focusing on suicide, and it wasn't just a vet thing. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
it
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's what I really loved about it. And when Walk the Talk America first started, we didn't even have our own program. So our thing was like, how do we fund mental health organizations? Because that was the biggest issue that we always read about or came across, was all of the mental health organizations were saying, we don't have the money. There's been budget cutbacks. So originally Walk the Talk America was formed to actually raise money and just give it to other people. Obviously we had a hard pivot from that because we started to build our own organizations or our own programs. This is not organizations, but our own programs that needed to be funded. So it kind of changed the dynamic of Walk the Talk America. But talking to you, RG, back in like 2018, you were the first organization that we came across where we, as a collective, said, yeah, we want to donate money to this organization. And we did. And it's kind of crazy because you think about like years later, we've kind of come full circle. Now here we are again. And I'm happy to have you guys on the show. We have RJ Stitt and Greg Cheese Harpster, the president and vice president of the Scott Sipple Foundation.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for having us. Yeah, Mike, I mean, it's been a crazy run here with a great group of individuals, volunteers that have raised money on the Scott Sipple Foundation scenario, and all the people in the firearms industry that has supported us over the years. I've been in the industry for a long time, the same as Mike. And whenever one of our own takes their own lives, it's very serious to us. And, a group of us banded together to go and put together a foundation with the concept of trying to solve some mental health issues and help people who are out there daily doing this fund their issues, the same as what you said, how you started. And that's essentially where we're at today with our event next week. Got a lot of amazing donations from basically every manufacturer in the firearms industry supporting us. So it's been great. And Walk the Talk has supported us from the beginning as well. When I asked that first time, you're like, absolutely, we'll send a donation. And we have reciprocated.
Absolutely. And I actually just put my donation in this year right before we got on the show.
Yeah.
So you guys got to be nice.
I'm through.
You got to
Thank
be
you.
nice to me now.
Thank you.
I want to buy your love. No, I think it's
You don't
think it's
know
a
us
beautiful.
well enough to know that we can be bought.
No, so let's and please, both of you, kind of just whoever wants to go first, introduce yourself, and then let's talk about why we're here today, right? Like, let's talk about Scott. Let's talk about the foundation. Let's talk about the event. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg.
All right. Yeah, I'm Greg Harpster with RG and a couple other people. We co-founded the Scott Sipple Foundation. I'm currently president of the foundation and do a lot of the legwork and organization of our event, that the Sporting Clay event that we hold every year, where we raise the majority of the money that we end up giving out to people. As of this year, after this year, we'll probably be approaching around $600,000 worth of donations that we've given out to other mental health organizations to support their cause. We look for smaller organizations, I guess, that are mostly volunteer. So the money's going right to their programs instead of the overhead of some of the national organizations and stuff like that. This year, we're fortunate enough to have by accident found a place in northern Pennsylvania that it's called Leak, Leek. They do a lot of work with veterans, supporting their mental health and suicide prevention through taking veterans out on game hunts and fishing trips and stuff like that. They have a large, several 100-acre facility. They're currently in the middle of building a new hall, they call it, for veterans to come, stay overnight, stay for a week, whatever. So that should be a good cause. I'm going up there on Sunday, actually, to meet face to face with the people up there and get a better read on them. But I think that's where we're going to go this year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I'm RG. I'm a veteran of the firearms industry. I've worked for 3 majors and 2 of the publicly traded ones. I'm not here to tout them today, so it's pretty obvious to figure out who I am. The Scott Sipple Foundation has done some great things. I mean, when we started this foundation, Scott and Greg grew up in the State College, Pennsylvania area. I grew up an hour away from, and there was no mental health outreach hotlines or anything like that. And we helped fund to get a couple of those off the ground, one of which has finally got their own facilities in the last year, where it's a 911 style hotline that students on campus at Penn State and the entire region can call into with mental health issues for support. So I'm very proud of what we've done. We've donated to so many different organizations. I'd hate to hit them all. Maybe Greg can touch on a couple more than what I have. But, it's been an amazing support from the firearms industry. And then when we started the shoot itself, it was primarily people who were from the firearms industry that supported it at the actual Sporting Clays event. And now we are primarily the people that are attending the event. There's probably only a couple teams of people from the firearms industry. It's a lot of people from the local hospitals and other people that are interested in the shooting sports that have gotten in and supported the event because they've seen what we've done and how much we've donated back to the community. Greg, do you have any other words there?
Yeah, I mean, like RG said, we've donated to a multitude of different organizations. Most of it, it's part of our bylaws that we have to give at least 51% of the funds raised to mental health organizations. We pick one major benefactor, and then with the other 49%, we don't just support one place every year. We support one place with a huge check for usually upwards of $40,000, and then we split the rest of it between a couple other organizations that we've dealt with in the past. We've given to a local organization here called the Jan Marie Foundation. Her sister took her life years ago, and she started this foundation. Now she's running programs in schools and other public spaces for the local community all throughout Center County and actually all throughout Pennsylvania. We've also, it's not just mental health organizations that we give to. While the vast majority of the funds go to that, Scott wasn't just, we don't just remember him for suicide. We remember him for the outdoorsman that he was, the great supporter of youth sports and youth hunter education and firearm safety. So we've given money to local 4-H organizations that have rifle programs to teach young kids firearm safety, respect for firearms, how to operate them properly, that they are dangerous things, but they can also be fun, to have the proper amount of respect for that kind of thing, to keep, to try to get education out there so they're not doing dumb things with firearms, or think about them as a tool, if they're having problems in their life, to have them not think about them as a tool to, take their own lives. So, it's been quite the journey.
No, that's awesome. So I and RG, we've talked about this at shows like before in passing, where it's kind of like, I feel like the local organizations or foundations like yourself that kind of work on this local level, like identifying these really good boots on the ground, like organizations, and being like, okay, we're going to raise money and help them, be successful. I feel like that's way more powerful than giving to any national organization. And I say that because Walk Talk America is a national organization, but I really love kind of drilling it down into the community, right? Because it's almost like voting in government, right? Like that's the most important thing is local government. We get so caught up in like the national stuff, but the local government is really where things get done. So it's kind of cool that, you guys kind of keep it local amongst, sounds like Pennsylvania, right? For the
Yeah,
most
for
part.
the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it really is hard to believe that whenever it is so close to home that when something happens, you just think that there's going to be people there and it's going to be easy. And people, other friends of ours since then have had similar issues and just, trying to find somebody just to talk to is very difficult in a more rural setting. I mean, anyone that's not familiar with State College, Pennsylvania, I mean, you're 2 hours from any other major city, and it's just there's just not a lot of there's a lot of people right there, and it's a great university town. But when you're looking for very specific types of help, it wasn't there a decade ago, and I'm very proud that we've been impactful to help people raise the funds to be able to man phone lines 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's when it comes to if we're gonna the term gun violence, which I cannot stand because it doesn't really do justice to how the buckets are broken out, right? Like you think of gun violence, you think of violence, right? Like a lot of people don't think of suicide because that's harm to self, although one can make an argument like you're being violent to yourself. But traveling all over the country, talking to a lot of people from our culture, the Second Amendment 2A community, right? A lot of them are shocked to hear like when you go into these rural areas, almost 100% of gun violence is suicide, right? Like you see very rarely do you see homicide in these rural spaces. And it's because people can't get help or they don't know where to go to get help, or help might be a 3 hour drive or 2.5 hours. You're right. Right. It's just like, and people kind of, it's overwhelming. I mean, people in places where you can get help sometimes when they're in a bad space don't even know where to go. And, these big cities have plenty of resources. So it's just like one of those things where I think people need to understand there's this weird relationship. Like firearms are so important in rural areas, right? Because the way people grow up, they're just a part of the lifestyle. I mean, many people use them for even food, right? Like it's different than a city, but at the same time, the firearm is the number one way people choose to take their life because of its effectiveness and how convenient it is. So rural areas definitely need attention paid to them. And it's just awesome that you guys are doing that. And you are starting to build these blocks that you can kind of look at and kind of be like, well, we're pioneers, like regardless of who gets the credit, right? But helping these organizations get on their feet, that's super powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we started the Scott Sipple Foundation, one of the goals was I can't count on both my hands the number of times I had people come up to me after the first year and say, you're holding an event for suicide prevention using firearms. And I was like, yeah, that's the point. It's definitely not the firearms fault that happens, but you know, anytime anybody thinks of suicide, they think of firearms, and that's the relationship people outside the 2A community, you know, associate with firearms, or violence in general. And we're just trying, along with the main mission of getting the word out about suicide prevention and mental health awareness, it's also helpful for us to be doing stuff like this in order to kind of break that stigma as well. That people that own guns aren't just out there shooting people or doing whatever. They can do a lot of good in that community as well. So that was part of the mission.
Yeah, I could definitely see how some people, it's counterintuitive for many, right? I mean, you think of RG, like some of the programs we have, it's super counterintuitive for people to they're like, wait, what are you doing? Like, wait, are you letting shoot guns? It's like, well, the gun can also be therapeutic for many people, and the gun is super important in a lot of our lives. I mean, what it represents freedom. It represents, being able to protect your community, your family, and yourself. I mean, there's so many things that come with firearms, and I think we'll get there as a community. Like, I think the more, like, that's what I'm saying. You guys think about how long you've been around. You've been around longer than Walk the Talk America. And I consider myself like the OG pioneer of this. And technically, I'm talking to the OGs right now in this space. But this is something that the rest of the world doesn't understand or know about. It's not like you guys have mass media coverage, like Fox and CNN's not going to cover this. Is like, here's an organization that's kind of homegrown from the firearms community that uses a firearm to raise money by hosting these shoots and, and helping all these grassroots organizations that are like boots on the ground that are helping the community. I mean, where is the media? Like,
I think we hit the newspaper one time. How about it?
Yeah, we hit the newspaper once, and I think the local television station came down, met me at Grace Gun Shop, and did an interview, which was kind of comical because they made me spell my name on camera so they wouldn't get it wrong, and then they got it wrong. They were calling me Gary whenever the newscast hit. It was pretty funny. So now all my daughter's friends call me Gary Harpster.
That's amazing. So, and Greg, I'm not sure if you know this. I think RG knows this, but I lost a dear friend of mine. I lost the president of my company. I used to own a firearms importer, and his name is Bill Strominger. And we had absolutely zero idea that suicide was ever in the cards for Bill. Like, just his personality. He was a big personality. He was always happy. I mean, he's from New Jersey like I am. So our definition of happiness sometimes comes off as like we're pissed, but he had the greatest sense of humor on the planet, had something went sideways one day, went to our warehouse, got one of the firearms, took it to his house, and decided that he couldn't be on this earth anymore. Right? It was a trauma bomb. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I was with him the day before. I'd flown back to New Jersey. I had to fly back to New Jersey, and I was just in shock. And I'm, thinking about how everybody handled it in the office. I mean, I wish I would have brought in counselors and got paid for therapy for my employees, but I don't think we knew how to handle like a trauma bomb going off. I would love to talk a little bit about Scott, if it's okay with you guys, because I talk about Bill all the time. As a matter of fact, I think about Bill every single day. So much to the point, I think I've told you this, Kevin. I remember one time I had a dream and he was in it, and I was like, "You're alive? You're fucking alive!" And I remember I was so pissed at him. I was pushing him, and I was like, "Dude, do you know how much trouble you got?" Like that. That's how much it's in my soul. But let's talk about Scott for a second, because I think what you guys are doing, he didn't die for anything. Like that's the best part about like what this is all about, is like a lot of people, they leave this earth and it breaks your heart and it tugs at your soul. This caused this, right? Like this is what came out of it. So much beautiful, so much helping, so much everything in the community. So I have to know about Scott. Like, tell me about Scott, because for you guys to all band together like this and keep it going, he must have been a beautiful human.
Yeah, I mean, he was, like I said, he was my.
He was a human.
Go ahead, RG.
He was a great dude. He was friends of ours. Like, we were very, very, very close. When he started traveling in the same areas that I traveled, at one point he was like, he worked for a shotgun manufacturer, and I worked for primarily handgun manufacturer at the time. And he wanted to know if we could split expenses. If he could stay in my hotel room, he'd buy dinner, type of deal, so we get 2 doubles. I gotta say it, Cheese. That first morning, we may have been out a little too late, had a good time together, a few beverages, talked to a lot of people. We get up 7 o'clock to go work this promotion. He says, you want to get in the shower first? You want me to get in the shower first? I'm like, go ahead. That means I get, another 10 minutes in bed. He gets out, getting ready. I go to get in the shower. I go in, use the restroom. I turn around and come back, and I'm like, Sipple, somebody shaved a cat in the bathroom. He had a shaved head, and he was still the hairiest guy in the crowd. Man, great sense of humor, fishing, hunting, just out socially all over the place, football games, baseball games. And again, him and I worked together, different companies, but we made the same travel schedule to work the same events type of scenario. And it's how we became very close because we only spent, 3-4 days a week together.
Exactly. It's a traveling circus of the firearms
Yeah,
industry, right?
exactly.
Like all the different distributor shows, all the dealers, gatherings, all that stuff.
So I met him 20 years after Greg, but then I met Greg and Kristen. No
Yep.
comment.
Yeah. So Greg, what are your memories of Scott?
Yeah, like I said, we had been friends since basically grade school. He was 2 years older than me, same age as or actually 4 years. One of my brothers the same age. They went to high school together and graduated. But Scott was an only child, and he didn't want to be. His parents were a little bit strict at times with him, so he spent a lot of time at the Harpster household. I have 4 older brothers, and then there was Scott there, who was basically the 6th brother. He ate most of his dinners at our house. He came over and learned how to ride motorcycles and, all that kind of good stuff. Went hunting with us, everything, all throughout our youth and until he went away to college. And then we broke contact for a few years while he was down in Tennessee going to college. And then eventually he moved back to Pennsylvania, and we reconnected at that point. And when he moved back to State College, we spent 3, 4, 5 days a week together, just hanging out, doing whatever. He bought a farm over in Port Matilda, which is where I live now. And we spent a lot of time over there, just hanging out, shooting stuff, whatever, going on side-by-side rides. And, this is a guy that seemed like he had everything. He was financially set. He could afford to do what he wanted to do anytime he wants. So like you said, nobody ever really had an idea that this was on his mind. And it was a rainy Thursday morning. The night before, he was at my house for dinner. Everything seemed fine. That Thursday afternoon, he was supposed to meet my daughter, which he considered his daughter. Basically, he went to all her volleyball games and stuff while she was in high school, whatever. And he was going to help her write a application for a scholarship on Thursday afternoon. Thursday morning, I got a text from him, which I don't know why it alerted me, but he just said, "Tell Michaela not to come over. Not good." That's all it said. And I don't know why, but the first thing I thought is he's going to do something to himself. And I have no idea why, because like I said, we didn't have that thought before that moment. And I texted him back, no answer. I called him, no answer. So I left work at 10 o'clock in the morning. I was driving to his house. I called my wife about 5 minutes from his house, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going over to Sippel's house." She said, "For what?" I said, "I think he killed himself." And I said, "I need somebody to tell me that I have to stop at his house or I'm driving by." And she laughed at me. She goes, "There's no way he did that." I said, "Well, I'm just telling you, I got a bad feeling something bad happened." And she goes, "Well, you have to stop." So I said, "Okay, I'll stop." So I stopped and went in. His cars were both in the driveway. His dog wasn't around, which was odd. Went upstairs to his office and found his note that he left. And so then I immediately called 911 and I started looking around the house for him, whatever. And I happened to walk by the picture window looking into the backyard, and there he was. Had shot himself with a shotgun. It was the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. And I pray to God I never have to do it again. But yeah, I mean, that was, like you said, a real trauma bomb. I didn't know what to do at that point. So I called my wife. I was on the phone with 911, and I called my wife and told her, and she showed up. And, a lot of it's a blur after that. I just started calling people, RG, anybody I can think of that was close to him, to let them know what was going on.
Yeah, the worst part about it, and is that, like, not only do you replay everything, like every little thing, you start to look for like clues, like, did he warn me 3 days ago? Like like you start to try to see if there's, to make sense of it, right? Because that's what we do as human beings. We got to try to make sense of it. But then the worst part about it is, especially when you're really close to somebody, is that everybody else thinks that you may have the answers and the whys, right? Like, so, RG, like in our industry, how much travel we do with each other, right? Like in terms of like, it's a traveling circus. Like I said, you know, you have all the shows, and depending on where you're at in the company, you could be, I mean, I know my month of January and February in the firearms industry, it's like Bill and I were together every single day, like every single day in a different state. And then people tend to think, okay, well, you spent so much time with this person, you have to have the inside track on it. And I remember, Greg, I remember the note that I was the only person Bill left a note for, which I've struggled with that for many years because I felt it was very unfair. Because he had a son, you know, and I'm like, and there was really nothing in the note that was really telling. Just he apologized to me, and then he listed out like all of his bank account numbers and everything, I guess to make things easier. Um, you know, being that he left that note for me, every single family member of his thought I had an inside track on the why, and I didn't. And it was hard to make sense of that. And that's why when I do public speaking events, especially when I'm in front of behavioral health people, because everybody tends to say like, oh, there's these signs and you need to look for them. And like, it's almost like obvious. For me, I'm like, that there was nothing that, like, the day before we were playing basketball together. And I remember Bill got so angry at me because I hadn't made my reservations and got the hotels that he had already booked for himself. And I remember him saying, like, he's like, if you end up having to stay at a different hotel, I'm gonna fucking kill you. You know what I mean? Like he was like telling me, like, hey, you got to get on this stuff. This stuff is coming right around the corner. So, you know, I totally sympathize with this story because it sounds like is eerily similar, right? Like, not on the radar, never would expect it in a million years, and then all of a sudden, bomb dropped. And now you got to call RG. You got RG's calling everybody else that knows him. And now we're trying to all make sense of this shit. It's so difficult. And you almost kind of wish, like, I wish all the time I could be like, Bill, look how many people this affected, like that loved you. And I know it's not going to make a difference, right? Because when I think of suicide, I think of like, you know, 9/11. And when you saw people having to make a choice of, do I jump out of the building or do I burn? Like they had, everything was all bad. Those are the two, and that's how, it's the only way I can make sense of people who have suicidal ideation, is that's how bad things have gotten. It's like, do I jump or I burn? Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, I guess if I knew back then, if I was connected with all the things that I've learned through, you know, the foundation and the people that I've met and the things that you can look for, there were definitely within the last year of his life some things that, had I known, had any knowledge about mental health or anything, probably would have raised a few red flags here and there, but it was never anything like earth shattering that it's just completely obvious that, you know, this guy's in a really bad mental state. So it's tough. And it's, you know, like you said, the behavioral health people, you know, they've been trained in this stuff. So yeah, that stuff's a little more obvious to them, but for the average human being, you just don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know Greg and I have talked about a bunch of stuff since then, and um, I was we've been fortunate enough to go on this fishing trip with some retailers that we've become really good friends with in Ohio, and I was there earlier in the week, and um, you know, Scott's name came up because he was one of the people that went in the early years, and that last year we would go the first week in June every year, and you know, Sippel, you know, these are the dates, blah blah blah, and he's like, nope, I'm not doing that. It's like, what do you mean you're not doing that? He's like, nope, I'm not a fisherman. I don't want to go. I'm like, you've been gone with us for like 7 years. Like, you might not be a fisherman. You're our friend. It was an outing, a gathering of friends. You know, not everybody on the boat's going to catch the same number of fish. It's totally fine. It was having a couple beers with the boys, going to dinner together. You know, the social part is way more important than the fishing per se. It's the same today as it was then. And tried to have a rational conversation with him on it, and he would have nothing to do with it. And you're like, I don't know what this is. and that was a year ahead, you know? So the things that we don't see, that we don't really realize what could be or may not be signs, who knows? But he was already thinking of things that he wasn't the same social being, even though he would go out with us, right, Greg? I mean,
Yeah.
he went out with us regularly, but it was like some things he would just have in his head that he could not do. And like that fishing trip, he was out, and don't know what was in his head about it, but he was absolutely not going. So
Yeah, there were a lot of
Yeah,
little
it's
things like that, little out of character stuff. There was an instance about in September the year before that he did this that I said he followed my daughter's volleyball team and whatever, and he was always there to help her out with anything. He never ever said no to my daughter about anything. Anything she asked, she got. And her volleyball team was gonna make a float for the homecoming parade, and she called him to ask him if the team could borrow his trailer, his 14-foot trailer, so they could decorate it, whatever, make this float. And he said no. And she's like, "What do you mean no?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "I can't just keep loaning my stuff out for free to people," which was completely out of character for him. But you think, before you know what you know, you think, "Oh, he's just having a bad day or whatever," and you brush it off like that.
and this is going to be a crazy comment, but some of the stuff we came to know later, it was the cost of his insurance because he was an independent contractor to a rep agency. He's paying insurance out of pocket. Meanwhile, he could afford it, but it was just so much money that he was beside himself about it. That the premiums had gone up so much. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, you can't. It goes back to like, you think like, oh, this person has it all, right? Or this person's fine, and you never can relate to sometimes like what is an actual issue to somebody or what that means to somebody, right? And I do a lot of reframing naturally in life, like, I'm going through some stuff right now with one of my dogs has a leukemia, and I also have a friend who is pulling his daughter off life support on Monday, and it's like I'm there, but this is like my coping skill, right? I'm there like mentally. This is like losing a kid to me too. My dogs are super important. I mean, they're humans at this point. But then I think, oh my God, like if I had to take my daughter off life support, and that kind of helps me get through the day. But sometimes people, especially when they have suicidal ideation, they start to get fixated on the things that really bother them, and they feel like, once again, like, what is it all worth? Maybe it's better if I'm not here. Like all the things that we've kind of learned over the years, like being close to this type of thing. And I think like the greatest point you guys made is now being, you know, reflecting back on some of these behavior changes. Yeah, I think maybe now you guys probably would be like, hey man, you okay? You know what I mean? But like at the time, you just don't think about it. It's like, oh, he doesn't want to go on a fishing trip, or oh, he doesn't want to loan, his trailer out. He's having a bad day. Now it's like more apt. And I think it's good that we discuss these things, as much as it's painful to talk about, the people we love not being here anymore. But it kind of helps people, especially somebody who may have be fortunate enough to never have experienced a suicide loss. But yeah, it's tough. But so I want to kind of switch to something a little bit more positive here. Not that talking about Scott and remembering him for who he was isn't awesome, but I think what's awesome is what you guys created after. And how does that come about? So you get this devastating news. It doesn't happen instantly, I assume, but you guys kind of probably regroup, rally eventually, and say, I want to do something.
It's kind of funny how that
How
happened.
long was it?
It
How long
was
was it?
3 days because it was at
Jeez.
his funeral, or actually not the funeral. It was the day before the funeral at the viewing at the funeral home. There was another gentleman there that had shared the same feelings that we needed to do something. Nobody knew exactly what to do, whatever, but he pulled in and had a trunk full of beer, and a bunch of us stood out in the parking lot drinking a few beers and whatever, and had this crazy idea about having a sporting clay shoot. What was it? 3 weeks later, we had it and raised, I don't know, 30 some $1,000 that first year. But yeah, it was almost immediate.
That was
That's incredible.
literally baptism by fire. It was like we knew if we didn't do it, that it would never get done. So let's go right now and get it done. And we had great people. So Scott was intimately involved in the sporting clays world, and he was I don't know what you call it, but he was a documented shooter, had, was nationally ranked, and he ran the region for the sporting clays community for their national rankings. We reached out to Greg actually reached out to a local sporting clays place that was one of his home places, and we got them involved, and they donated and donated the course for the day. And we got, I think that first year, we got federal to donate ammunition, of which they've continued to donate, not always in the best of times, but they've been able to figure out a way to support us from that perspective. Firearms manufacturers, Smith & Wesson, Springfield Armory, Mossberg, Ruger, and it goes on and on. Optics people in our friendship group, Vortex, has been a major donor, but everybody wanted to support it because Scott was part of that community and everybody knew him. It's only grown from there. Greg handles the part of figuring out the donations for the most part, and talks to me about it. I'm the beggar in the group. I go out and ask every company if they can be a part of it and donate to us. And then the other person who didn't want to be on the board to begin with, but is today, Tom Grice from Grice Gun Shop in Pennsylvania, has handled the firearms. And he also has been very much involved in asking for donations for the foundation. And he's involved in Big Brothers and that kind of stuff as well. So this is part of his thing. And then Sippel's friends of Tom's as well.
Yeah, it's been really
I thought
amazing to see how it's grown from that first year. I mean, you think about stuff like this and you're holding this in memory of Scott, and you have a good cause or whatever, but you think, after, just as things normally go, after a few years, the interest starts to wane and you lose people and you lose people and you lose people. But we turn down as many teams now because we just don't have the open spots as more than what we had for that first year. So it's become a really big event here in central PA. People look forward to it. I've had countless people come up and tell me that go and shoot sporting clays a lot and do a lot of these charity sporting clay events, that ours is by far the best one that they have ever gone to. We try to keep it a relaxed environment. It's a great value for the people. It's $90 for somebody to come shoot, and that gives them lunch, dinner, drinks, all their ammo. Everything's included in that $90. So we're not making any money on registration fees. We're making all our money thanks to our great donors and all our great volunteers that come up and give a day of their life to support us and believe in what we're doing.
That's I wanted to mention one more thing, Mike. Two other people that are major sponsors. I wanted to say their name. Greg reached out to Sheets at one point, who is a regional convenience store chain that is across a bunch of states here in the Northeast, throughout the South and the Midwest. And Sheets donates lunch every year. They bring a bunch of drinks, water, soda, that kind of stuff. They've been doing that for a few years. That's been phenomenal. And then Sam's Club also. We've reached out to Sam's Club, and they have gone out of their way to take care of us on soft drinks and side dishes and the like. Greg has some friends that have been doing the pig roast and stuff. It's a really good time. The event without shooting is a very enjoyable event. And then if you're into the shooting deal, and even if you're not and you want to learn it, it's a good time. There's always somebody in your, if you don't have a full foursome, there's always a couple people in every foursome or 6 groups of 6 that actually are shooters and are willing to help out. It's a very casual, laid back deal. We don't have many of those guys that come out and shoot 92. There's a lot of 75s that are very happy.
There's a lot of 45s that are very happy too.
Very true. Very.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I was just gonna say, like, it's so easy to come out of the gate strong, especially when you're passionate and you're hurt and you're emotional. But like for it to grow every year and you guys keep picking up the momentum and it gets stronger and stronger. That's awesome. Um, I want to talk about for a second because RG, is there anybody we need to shame? Is there any gun companies that said no? Because I am the begging guy at Walk the Talk America. Is there anybody we need to throw under the bus right now? I have a few people that I got.
Honestly, really, for the most part, no. Over the years, again, a lot of it has been personal relationships, right? So I knew people at SIG and got them to donate back in the day. Now I don't know anybody at SIG, so they're not doing anything. But
The SIG, yeah. Yeah, let's throw them under the bus.
I knew who you were talking about.
No, that Greg. So the funny part is like when I first started Walk Talk America, I remember sitting around with my CFO at the time, and I owned a company called Eagle Imports, which imported Bursa and things like that. And I said, God, this should be super easy to get like $2,000 from 50 gun companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like because we were trying to budget and that I couldn't have been. I was way off. It's like I'm sitting around and I always say like now because I do this full time. If you see me at like NASGW or you see me at NRA show, I walk around in this nice suit and I call it my begging suit. And I go up to the booth and this booth may cost $150,000. And I'm like, hey, they're like, what's the buy-in? I'm like, it could be as small as you want. If you want to donate 500, donate 500. If you want to donate 25K, donate. And they go, yeah, it's just not in our budget. And I'm like, you want me to redo your booth for you? I can figure out a way to cut some of the shit out of your booth that will free up $500. You don't need the double padded carpet.
Yeah.
Well, saying that,
local restaurant that Scott spent countless hours in and spent thousands and thousands of dollars a year, I would be willing to bet. And I went to them, and they were friends of his as well. And I went to them the first 2 years. The first year I went and I dealt with the husband, and he donated a coffee mug and a t-shirt. And I thought, holy shit, you're making, Jesus. And then the next year I went and I thought, oh, I'll talk to the wife. Nope, coffee mug and a t-shirt. Crazy.
But people like NSSF, Chris Dolnak has stepped up and they always donate a firearm for us to auction. Friends of NRA, which is somebody that I personally deal with, Kathy always donates something, guns, the clay bird traps, whatever kind of stuff that they have that they're using, they always donate as well. So there's a lot of generosity. Could there be more? Sure. And even people like distributors, because I deal with the distributors all the time, who most of the people outside of the firearms industry will never know, but Sport South, Lipsy's, Davidson's, Xander's, RSR, Big Rock, Cam, Gunorama, all these people donate something. And again, because we're in the firearms industry, like I'm to the point now where like, can you donate a scope or a fishing rod? Because it's just, we end up with a bunch of guns there. So if you're into the firearms world and you want to get into some auctions and that kind of stuff, it's a great place to be. I don't know. We between silent raffles, live auctions, card drawings, various different ways, games of skill. We probably give away 40 firearms at the event. It's that's the big draw. It's a very gun friendly group. A lot of people show up knowing that there's going to be something interesting there. Scott worked with Benelli, and they've been generous. The corporate has taken care of us with firearms every year. So yeah, it's a fun time. And when we're done shooting, we have this pig roast and maybe have a few beers, and everybody leaves there happy.
How much preparation, like when does the preparation start after the event's finished? Like, do you have this event coming up on the 20th, right? Which is a Friday. Right, I believe it's a Friday. It goes off. It's going to be a success. You guys have a proven track record. The history's there. When do you start working on the next one?
Usually we don't really start working on until, mid-January or early February. It used to be sooner than that, but at this point, we've done it so many times that, and and as successful it is as it is, we haven't had to really change stuff up too much to keep getting people to come back. So, it kind of takes care of itself at this point. Like I get people, I don't open up the registration for the shoot until about the beginning of February. And every year for the last couple of years, I've gotten multiple emails about people, when's that going to be open? I want to be the first one to sign up so I get a spot, So, uh, we never did really any kind of advertising or anything like that on the radio or TV or newspapers about the event. It's all just been organic growth, and word of mouth is what's made it what it is at this point. Hopefully that can continue that way. That keeps our costs down and makes it easy for us. But at some point, I'm sure we're going to have to reevaluate how we do things in the organization of it. And at some point, there's going to have to be somebody willing to take over for me and RG and the current board members as well. I know my daughter's interested in it, and she's actually a member of the board as well. But we're going to have to, at some point, be able to find some people that have a passion about this, this cause of mental health and suicide prevention, and get them involved, to get some new people involved so it can continue.
We have over the years done a few weeks after the event, do the after action report and talk about what went right and what went wrong, and let's work more on this and do more of that and less of this. So we've put the strategic plan in for some of it pretty early, but fortunately it's taken a little bit of the plan is in place that we can follow that script pretty well at this point. Greg and his family, brothers and sister-in-law and sister-in-laws and wife and their families all have spent a lot of time on the prep. I'm sure the last couple weeks have been pretty fast and furious, and I know that week of there's a lot of things to get put in place.
Yeah, this week and next week, I'll be the least favorite person out of my family and friends, because I'm a pretty direct guy, and people, I put people in places where I think, here you go, you'll be good at this, whatever, and then you always get volunteers, and I love our volunteers and whatever, but there's all kind of stuff, and everybody's coming to me for questions about stuff like, hey, where should I have that guy park? I don't care. Just park him somewhere. You know what I mean? And it's just those kind of things on the day of. But I get, I guess I don't think I'm being that way, but I get a little dismissive of people coming up to me all the time. But that's why I say this week and next week, I'll probably be the least favorite person in my friend and family group. And my wife would probably kick me out of bed a few times, but it's all good.
Greg, where should I put the sponsor signs?
Well, I applaud both of you. I think what you guys have put together is pretty amazing. And I know Scott's probably looking down, being like, damn, those guys did it. Like, I mean, this is a really great thing what you're doing. And I wish, I always say, like, these are the untold secrets, the stories about the firearms industry that people don't know about, right? Everyone just looks at us and thinks all we want to do is arm people, and we're just like, private from a cold dead hand, Second Amendment, and we don't care about things. And we really do. It's the complete opposite. My time coming into the firearms industry is amazing how many people have causes that they care about and really pursue them and kind of do it quietly. You think about all the conservation work that a lot of firearms companies contribute to. Obviously we've been contributing to veteran organizations for years. I mean, that's something that's a standard, but I think mental health and suicide prevention is the next space that we could really become the leaders in, especially if we continue to do these things. But having you guys on that local level, I think is just awesome. And I do wish you continued success. I mean, I know you're going to be successful with it. So just, kudos to both of you for what you do.
Yeah, we'd love to have you come up to one of our events some year here and, talk about your organization with people as well. Like I said, we'd love to have you. We love to have anybody that is involved in this cause and can get the word out, with a little different message than what we have too.
Greg, what's the official name of the place where we have the shoot now? It's a Shenandoah Sportsman's.
Yeah, it's just Shenandoah Sportsman, and it's in Huntington, PA.
Huntington, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour outside of State College. It's an absolutely beautiful facility. It sits on top of a mountain with mountains all around it. It's absolutely beautiful. Anybody that's familiar, it's 15 minutes from Racetown Lake, which is Army Corps of Engineers lake that was built in the late 60s, early 70s, and a big recreation area for Western Pennsylvania. And this club, the folks there are great, and they've served us unbelievably well. The location is gorgeous. It would be nice if it were off of an intersection of two major highways, but it's not. So it takes a little bit to get there, but it's worth the trip.
And Scott was integral in setting up their sporting clay course for them. They're the oldest, I think they're the oldest sportsman club in Pennsylvania, and they were primarily a skeet shooting course before, and Scott had been going up there and working with them, and he's the one that laid out their course and got them involved and got them to put in the sporting clay. It's a little bit more meaningful for us, knowing that background to it as well.
Yeah. So why don't you give out the website? I have one last question for you, but let's tell people where they can go to actually donate or find out more information, and then we're going to wrap it up with a question for both of you. I don't care who goes first, but it's our standard exit question. But where can people go to find out about you? And do you have social media presence? Any of those things?
Yeah, we have a Facebook that my wife manages, and also the website is scottsipplefoundation.org. So yeah, either of those places. There's an email address on there that people can reach out, or there's a phone number on there they'll call and they'll get me. But yeah, on the website you can go on there. There's donate tabs. There's sponsorships for our event, and just some general information about who Scott was and what our mission is, and that kind of thing.
Okay, so I don't know who wants to go first. Greg, you want to go first, or RG? Who wants to go first with this question?
Sure, I'll go.
I know that's loaded, right? Because you're like, wait, what am I?
It doesn't matter.
All right, RG. RG, you go first, and then Greg, you're gonna close it. But how do you tend to your mental health these days, RG?
Long walks, and that's not a joke. I try to get outside an hour or so a day. It seems to regularly relieve stress and get your blood pumping and do things that are outside of the work day. Yes, am I on the phone out there sometimes? For sure. But yeah, go get some exercise in, and it makes a huge difference in the daily task whenever you've put a few miles in, and you can refocus and not be as distraught as you can get during a stressful workday.
Yeah, so for me, I through the foundation, actually one of the organizations that we donated to in the past and continue to support, this run by a retired Marine Corps General Tom Jones. He runs an organization called Outdoor Odyssey, where he has programs for disadvantaged kids in Western Pennsylvania, brings them up. It's all free, teaches them how to be leaders, mentors, whatever. And he also does every 2 months, he has a week-long thing where he brings in veterans from all over the country, and has a program to help them learn how to deal with stress. So the point that I'm getting at is I've gone through that program, and I've learned a lot of things about ways to manage stress and mental health. And I do a lot of breathing exercises now. Just, it's crazy, but to think about something as simple as breathing can really bring you back into focus if you're doing it right. It's a mindfulness exercise. And then I spend a lot of time here on my farm with my dogs and taking them swimming, taking them for walks and stuff like that. But I practice a lot of the things that I've learned up at Outdoor Odyssey, as far as, like I said, breathing techniques, yoga, Tai Chi. They do all kind of stuff. They have people come up and, manage stress through doing art projects and stuff like that. It's just giving people tools to deal with stress. And there's a billion different ways you can do it that you wouldn't even think are, but pretty much anything, as long as you can pick something that you can focus on to clear your head of all the outside noise for 10, 15 minutes, even a couple times a day, it's really beneficial.
Yeah, I love asking that question because you just never get the same answer. and it's really interesting because a lot of times people don't stop to think, and it forces them to think like, oh man, like what do I do? Um, it's a beautiful thing, right? And when people can hear different methods and think, well, maybe I should try that, I think that helps, right? Life is stressful, life is tough, and if you could just find these little things that could help reduce and mitigate all the drama and everything else that comes with life, I think it's a great thing. But I want to thank both of you for coming on the show today and talking about Scott and being vulnerable to talk about Scott and just the foundation. Thank you. I think more people need to hear this stuff. Like they need to hear that it's out there and that there's people from our side of the world, which I'd say the 2A community, that are doing great things and really care about humanity and life, and making Earth better for people mentally. Thank you guys for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And
Thank you
again,
for having us.
open invitation to come up to one of our events. It's always the third Friday in June now. So put it on your calendar. If you can make it up, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think next year, definitely for sure. I'd love to attend. We'll definitely bookmark that. But I want to thank the listeners. I want to thank the sponsors. I particularly want to thank Ruger, because RG's here today. No, seriously, Ruger is one of those companies that I'd say is the gold standard for what we do, and they don't take enough credit for it. RG, you guys don't. I can't thank Ruger enough, but I want to thank all the other ones too. We have Arms Corps out there, we have Davidson's, Lipsy's, and like as you mentioned before, the surprise comes from all the distributors that help this fight against suicide and better mental health. They really don't have a they're not going to become famous or popular by doing that. They just do it because it's the right thing to do. I feel like that's the culture of Ruger. So I want to thank all the sponsors. I want to thank all the listeners, and obviously thank you guys for showing up today. And until next time, folks, we wish you better mental health.